Being one of the strongest men in the world for all these years has meant everything to me. It's been my life for 15 years. You know, you spend every day you're in pain in some way or another. You have to be able to sort of put your mind in a place to be able to do the things you do. Honestly, I'm like, I can't not have competitive things in my life. I just can't. It's f***ing terrible. Like, I'm like, I can't help it. I have to win. I've literally dedicated my life to it, and it has become everything. It has literally been my life. I'm Terry Hollands, I'm 40 years old, I'm a professional strongman. I've been competing in World's Strongest Man competitions now for around about 16 years. I've been twice third at World's Strongest Man, 9 top 10 finishes, twice on the podium at Europe's Strongest Man, and I'm a former Britain's, England's and UK's Strongest Man. So I always loved strongman as a kid, and I was really into it, especially when I was really young. Actually, one of my earliest childhood memories was watching World's Strongest Man and Jeff Capes winning, I think it was in 1983. So I was always a big fan of the sport. Obviously, it wasn't something that I ever saw myself doing, necessarily moving forwards, but I was playing rugby and was sort of getting into the gym a lot more. And I saw a local competition just down the road, a beginner novice competition, and I was like, well, it looks like fun. It's something I've always enjoyed. So I'll literally just go down there, enter the competition. Didn't have a clue what I was doing. Went down there, did the competition, and was fortunate enough to win. You know, I sort of stepped away from it. It was like, yeah, I think I could be quite good at this if I actually sort of trained for it and took it seriously. So it was sort of more by luck than anything. It wasn't like a dream of mine to compete in World's Strongest Man, but I'm certainly glad I did find the sport. I love strongman because it's just a personal test. I've always been someone that likes to challenge myself. Obviously, I have a sort of a good base with being strong. I was naturally very big and very strong to start with. So this for me is a perfect way of testing my body and testing what I'm capable of. And even as I've got older, obviously my body's not as fresh and as in good condition as it once was, but I'm still constantly just trying to test myself to see what I can achieve. And you know, obviously my goals are slightly different now I'm older, but still the same mindset. I'm trying to constantly challenge myself and test myself and see what I'm capable of. And I think that for me is what the beauty of strongman is. Where strongman's sort of this niche sport, and a lot of people perhaps don't understand the work behind the scenes that we put in. I think the whole thing with social media becoming a lot more relevant with everyone. It's been a great positive thing for strongman because people then start to see what goes on behind the scenes. The training advice, and you know, there's plenty of good people out there giving good advice on social media, and perhaps people that never even considered lifting an Atlas stone can now watch someone doing it, learn about the techniques. You know, they'd watch it on TV at Christmas on World's Strongest Man, but now they can actually learn how to do it themselves and go to gyms where they've got strongman equipment and actually have a go themselves. And I think social media has really helped that in terms of, one, making people understand the sport better in terms of behind the scenes, but also giving them a bit of knowledge so they can go and attempt to do it themselves. It's a lot more inclusive than it used to be. Now we've got weight classes and weight classes for the women as well, and like masters like I did last year, so the over 40 stuff. You know, we've got first timers, novices. You know, there's all different categories now, so it's a lot more inclusive. And I think social media has just brought more attention to our sport and making people realise, oh, I can have a go of that. I can get involved. I can do some farmers walks. I can buy a log. You know, I can do all this stuff. You can start to get a much stronger connection with an athlete if you understand more about them as a person rather than just what they are as a competitor. And I think in that respect, the fans have become sort of more engrossed in the sport and more involved, because now they have this bond with the athletes now. And obviously the more that happens, the more people we've got turning up to shows and stuff. And yeah, and the meet and greets afterwards, it's amazing. Like, people come up and they chat with you and they know about the training and about, oh, you know, I saw you did this in training. You know, I've been doing it like that. Do you think that's all right? And you know, so they have a better bond with us, and also they understand the sport so much better than they used to. And yeah, it's all positive. It's such a great place to be right now. the level of respect we all have for each other is really great, because obviously we all understand how hard it is. And I think, I'm not saying that it's not like that with other sports, but in terms of, you know, you spend every day you're in pain in some way or another, or, you know, you have to be able to sort of put your mind in a place to be able to do the things you do. And so we all are almost like mentally, in a lot of ways, we're the same people. You know, we're all very much understand each other and the way we all work. So I think that's what brings us all closer together, because there is that sort of huge mutual respect, but also because we're on the road a lot together, we compete together. You know, we might be traveling abroad and it's all the same faces all the time. So I'm very close with and would consider, yeah, some of my best friends. I don't get to see that often because they live in other countries, but we all have this amazing bond because, yeah, we all sort of understand each other so well. So I was getting ready for Europe's Strongest Man last year, and I got a leg infection while I was over in Australia. So I was only about 3 or 4 weeks out from Europe's Strongest Man, and I basically wasn't allowed to compete at Europe's. And I was starting to feel a little bit like sort of frustrated with Strongman, just from a sort of personal point of view. I wasn't perhaps making the progress that I wanted to, and I felt like I needed to have a little bit of a break. Still carry on training, but just be a little bit more sort of selective with what I do, give my body, like some injuries, a chance to heal up a little bit. So I decided I was going to have a few months off. But for me, I'm someone that always needs a challenge and a test, or I need some purpose, you know, for training and stuff. So I have toyed with the idea in the past about doing it and doing a bodybuilding show, so I felt like that was just a good time to do it. You know, and again, it sort of comes back to my mindset. I like to challenge myself and test myself, and I knew that that would be a very extreme challenge. And I wanted to sort of go through the whole process and learn a lot about myself, which I did. And it was a good experience, but very tough though. With bodybuilding training, the weights are not perhaps as extreme, obviously, as with Strongman. It's more about sort of slightly lower weight and higher repetition, so it's not doing as much damage. But yeah, I'd spent probably about 2 years where I hadn't been able to deadlift 400 kilos, which for me in the past, that was like a routine lift. Went away, did the bodybuilding, I didn't deadlift at all for 4 months. And then within 4 weeks of me doing the bodybuilding show, I was back deadlifting 400. So the rest from that sort of lifting obviously did me some good. Yeah, I mean, I'm not back where I need to be quite yet. I'm getting closer every competition I do, and every training session I'm getting a bit closer, but hopefully with a few more months, I'll be back and being competitive on a world level again. When I started, there wasn't the resources out there that there are now. So basically a lot of my training was stuff I'd read in magazines, slightly modifying like powerlifting routines. And there was no thought to looking after your body in terms of stretching and mobility stuff and things like that. Even the nutritional side of it was nowhere near as advanced as it is now. You know, we was always led to believe that you just go in the gym, lift heavy as often as you can, and you eat as much as you can and try and get 10,000 calories in. Obviously, as time's gone on, I've learned more, and obviously there's a lot more knowledge in the sport in general. Now my training's a lot more selective. I don't train stupidly all the time. I'm not constantly like lifting heavy weights, you know. A lot of it's just a gradual process of building the weights up, and then I'll strip it right back and go back to the beginning again. As I've got older, it's sort of, I've cut out all the, what I call fluff exercises, you know, some lateral raises or front raises, where I don't necessarily feel like you really need them for Strongman. Maybe if you've got a bit of an injury or a bit of an imbalance, but you don't always need to be doing them. So I've sort of cut a lot of that sort of stuff out. So most of my training based around compound movements. And just the reason being is because my recovery is not as good. I'm a lot older than I used to be, and I feel like, you know, I need to condense my sessions as much as possible. So it's trying to get the most out of the least amount of training. I do 5 sessions a week, but I'm very selective about what I do in those sessions. Most sessions only take me 45 minutes to an hour. It's pretty intense, but you know, it's not a long session. Whereas in the past, I've always sort of done a lot of stuff that I perhaps didn't need to do, and my sessions would be 3 hours long. So yeah, it's trying to get the most from the least. That's how I sort of view my training now. You know, I went through a period of about 3 years where I was injured pretty much the whole time. Just went from one injury to the next to the next. I've had to adjust my training and train a lot smarter now because of that. I think probably at the time I was a bit younger and a bit more sort of carefree and just, I just want to go in and lift heavy. So I think that's the thing I find hardest about Strongman, and the most frustrating thing is, yeah, just trying to stay injury free and be able to train consistently for long periods of time. As an older person, lifting weights, late 30s, 40s, 50s even, compounds are always going to be beneficial because they do work most stuff. You might need to do a little bit of assistance exercise just to bring up weaker areas, but you know, you should base a lot of your training around the compound movements. You know, especially if you're just starting out, I wouldn't recommend training probably more than 3 times a week. I feel like as an older person, with your recovery being that little bit slower, 3 times a week is probably enough. When you're younger, you can get away with doing 5 and 6 sessions a week. As you get older, if you're not used to that sort of volume, it's probably hard to start doing that immediately. So I think certainly from a strength training point of view, 3 sessions is probably plenty for someone in their 40s and 50s. I mean, I always feel like my longevity is, one being sort of a bit of luck. I'm very genetically blessed for the sport, I suppose you would say. I was naturally very strong and very big to start with, and I've always sort of found that a lot of strongman stuff comes quite easy to me, especially when I was starting out. So that's obviously a part of it. I feel like my body was built for strongman. Also, it's just a case of, you know, like I said, training smart. I feel like a lot of people, especially when they start out, they train like lunatics and, you know, just end up ripping their body to pieces. But for me, it's just been this gradual thing where I'll sort of go through the year and gradually work through the weights, and I'm never pushing to absolute failure on anything I do, and just saving that little bit back all the time. I feel like that's enabled me to continue to be competitive right up into an older age. But also it's a case of looking after your body. You know, so many people, they you know, like I said, when I started, how that was, you know, they go in and they just lift heavy all the time and they don't do a lot of the things that they need to do in terms of recovery. Stretching, foam rolling, ice baths, Epsom salt baths, you know, all these little things. Looking after your nutrition, you know, that's something that I've really had to look at later on in my career in terms of recovery and just feeling a lot healthier. Look at my nutrition and, you know, I've remedied a lot of the issues with that. So, yeah, there's a lot of things you can do to help you stay fit and healthy for the sport. But it's just a lot of people don't tend to do them. You know, I probably spend as much time doing rehab stuff as I do actually training. I personally don't think I'll ever stop training. Obviously, I'll probably need to back it off at some point, but I personally feel like I'll continue going to the gym and training right up until I'm an old man. Well, older than I already am. But in terms of sort of having that competitive outlet, I don't know if I'll maybe take up powerlifting for a few years. It's not quite so tough on the body as strongman because there's the 3 events you have to train for: bench, squat, deadlift, and that's pretty much it. And then probably eventually after that, I don't know, take up bowls or something. But I don't think I'll ever stop training completely. I think I'll always be in the gym doing something. Certainly, yeah, like I said, all the time my body allows me to train, I'll keep trying and keep pushing it. Honestly, I can't not have competitive things in my life. I just can't. Everything's a competition, everything. Even like my missus gets annoyed with me when we're playing Monopoly and she's like, "You're terrible." Like, I'm like, I can't help it. I have to win. Probably like less competitive about strongman than I am anything else in my life, because I'm like, I've got to the point, it's like, you know, I've done my thing with this. I've tried to do all this. Now I'm just enjoying it. And I get so pissed off if I don't win, like so bad, and I can't stop myself. So the strongman in the time I've been doing it has changed so much in the respect that when I first started, the guys were just, you know, just big, strong guys, just went in the gym, lifted heavy weights, and they didn't really, you know, strongman was just this outlet for them and nothing more. It's become more now a proper sport where there's a lot more thought goes into the training and the preparation for competitions, the way they conducted themselves when I first started. You know, we'd compete on a Saturday afternoon in some weird and wacky country, And then in the evening, we'd all go out drinking and we'd all go out partying, and that was very much the way the sport was. No one really looked after their health that much. We all ate terrible food all the time. We went out partying after competitions, you know, and we always had this sort of process of like, you know, it was just for fun, you know, although we were competing, it was all fun. Whereas now it's sort of shifted more where the guys are like, you know, like legitimate athletes now. They look after themselves. They're stretching foam rolling, they're ice baths, they're going to bariatric chambers. They're, you know, they're doing all these things to help their recovery. Their training's a lot more structured and a lot more thought goes into that. And most of the guys don't drink at all. They're constantly watching their diet. You know, they're a lot more conscious of like the things they can do to improve. And I think when I first started, it was not really that serious. And I think obviously seeing the sport progressing in terms of the weights everyone's lifting and how competitive everyone is now, you know, you can see that it's so much more serious now, because, you know, the progression in the weights we're lifting is huge. You know, it's gone up so much in the time that I've been involved in the sport. I remember my first World's Strongest Man, and we'd do like a 115 kilo log for reps, and now they're doing like 160s and 170s in a lot of competitions. It's really gone up that much. And even the deadlift for reps, back in the day it'd probably been 300, maybe a bit less than that even, and now you're looking at, it's a minimum of 360 kilos, sometimes up to 400 kilos for reps. I think a lot of that is, yeah, just where the guys are so much more professional in the way they conduct themselves away from competitions as well. You're seeing, you know, greater athletes than you ever did 10, 15 years ago. Where the limits are, who knows? You know, every year you get to a point you see someone do something and you think, God, this is like got to be getting close to the human limit. And then the following year or a couple of years later, someone breaks that and goes beyond what's been done in the past. So I'm always excited about seeing how the sport will evolve, but I just see it being better all round, from the athletes and the fans and the TV shows and everything, just continuing to grow as it has done over the last 15 years. My first national competition was UK Strongest Man in Belfast in 2005. Yeah, it was a very tough competition, 3 days, 5 events a day. By the end of it, it was a real battle to get through it, but I was fortunate enough to win. So, and from that was what sort of give me the springboard to go to World's Strongest Man and start getting the international competitions. You know, the level of athletes compared to now was much lower. The crowd, you know, I mean, to be fair, they did do a good job back then, but the sport just wasn't as popular. There was probably about, I don't know, 300-400 people there watching us, and they'd made a real big effort to try and get a crowd there. That was a good crowd for a strongman competition back then. And obviously now you're looking at 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 coming to things like Britain's Strongest Man. You know, it's just such a great feeling to see the sport progress and grow, not just in the athletes getting better, but, you know, that we're now in big arenas with like thousands of people watching us, where before we were in a pub car park or a little walkway at a holiday park, or, you know, that was how it was. And I think it's amazing to see how the sport's gone like that. But still, it was good memories, and I think that was all sort of the building blocks. I always believed strongman could become this popular. It just needed to sort of go the right way and the right people to get involved, and I'm just glad to have been a part of that journey. Yeah, when I came into competing, certainly going to World's Strongest Man, there was like, the British guys generally didn't make the final of Worlds, and, you know, they didn't really particularly do very well. We'd only had 3 guys on the podium at World's Strongest Man prior to me. Fast forward a few years, we had 3 guys making the final, and like all the British guys had a chance and like got very close. And I think just sort of the progression in terms of going from the small comps, or say small, big titles, but smaller crowds, smaller events, to how it is now. It's made the sport more popular, it's made the athletes better, certainly from a British point of view. So now you're seeing guys like last year, we had 3 Brits in the final of World's Strongest Man, you know, both the Stoltmans, Adam Bishop, you know, and that's, now it's like British guys are all good. But I think because the sport has progressed so much in this country in terms of the crowds and the popularity of it, one, we get better athletes coming into the sport because more people are aware of it, but also, you know, I think everyone's more enthusiastic about it and just train harder because they want to be part of these huge events. So then that's giving us that springboard to then go to World's Strongest Man and see British people doing really well, which is fantastic. And I feel like I've sort of been part of that journey, which has been amazing. I mean, it's great to have been part of inspiring the next generation of strongman. Like I said, we've got so many, you know, Eddie went on and did what he did, and we've got so many good up-and-coming British strongmen now that, you know, it's just been nice that I've been able to be a part of that and inspire some people to do it, which is, you know, that for me is better than any trophy I could ever win. I've always said I'll stop strongman when, one, my body doesn't allow me to do it anymore, or two, I stop enjoying it. And I think all the time at the moment, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still enjoying the training. I still enjoy being involved with the sport, traveling, competing all over the world, all that side of it. As soon as that enjoyment goes, or my body says enough's enough, that'll be when I'll stop. Oh, you know, I'd probably imagine it's going to be sometime in the next 5 years or so, if I'm honest, because, you know, the body is sort of starting to creak a little bit, the knees are a little bit messed up and stuff like that. But I think, yeah, all the time I can do it, I'll continue to do it because I love everything about the sport, and, you know, being around the guys, and, you know, it is so much fun, and for me it's like the perfect sport for my personality. So all the time I can do it, I will. But after I finish competing, I still want to be involved in the sport for sure. It's definitely something that I want to stay involved with. So I'll continue still doing the coaching seminars and probably get into a lot more coaching than I do now. I do bits and bobs, but I'd probably push that a lot more when I'm done competing, because, you know, it's like I said, when I started doing strongman, there was nothing out there for people to learn and things like that. So I'd love to be able to give what I've learned over the years back to people, and that for me is a real positive thing to do. So I'd like to do that. But yeah, I definitely want to stay heavily involved in the sport for a long time to come. Being one of the strongest men in the world for all these years has meant everything to me. It's been my life for 15 years. I've literally dedicated my life to it, and it has become everything. My social life, my job, you know, my outlet, my place where I relax, you know, all of strongman for me has become that. So yeah, it has literally been my life.